Hello, everyone. I'd like to officially welcome you to today's webinar, Managing Up, Navigating the Vista Supervisor Relationship. My name is Calvin Landrum, and I'm a training coordinator with AmeriCorps Vista at the Corporation for National and Community Service. And I'll be your host for today's webinar. I'll also be facilitating the live Q&A at the end of the session. Also joining us are Jessica Knight, Rachel Raddick, and Indy Clark from our partners at Education Northwest, who have helped to prepare today's webinar and will be managing the WebEx technology. You'll also see them in the chat and the Q&A to help address any questions you may have during the session. I'd like to take a second and welcome our main speaker today, the wonderful Ms. Signa Bishop. Signa has been working in the training and development field in higher education, nonprofit, and national service settings for the past 10 years. She holds a master's degree in education and a certificate in intercultural training and development through Portland State University. Before joining Oregon Health and Science University in 2013 to work on leadership development, Signa worked for several nonprofits, recruiting volunteers, engaging students in service, running college access programs, and managing AmeriCorps programs. Signa also got her professional start as an AmeriCorps Vista. So everyone, please help me in welcoming Signa Bishop.
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here to discuss best practices for managing up, or in other words, how to communicate effectively in order to develop a strong and productive working relationship with your VISTA supervisor. As Calvin mentioned, I served as a VISTA myself and then went on to serve as a VISTA leader and a VISTA program director. So I'm quite familiar with many of the challenges that come up between VISTAs and their supervisors throughout the service year. I might not go so far as to say I've heard it all, but I do feel pretty comfortable saying that I've heard a lot. Likewise, in my current position, I also work with supervisors, folks just like your VISTA supervisors, and I help them build their leadership and management skills. As such, I can provide some perspective on what your supervisor might be thinking or where they're coming from. Hopefully, this will help you better understand the supervisor role in general, as well as what might be going on with your supervisor and what managing up strategies might be the most effective with them. This presentation is designed to help you identify methods for building successful professional relationships, assist you to develop strategies to communicate your needs to your supervisor in a more clear and specific way, and identify VISTA resources to support you in the workplace challenges you may be experiencing. We'll also explore ways to address some of the common communication challenges that VISTAs face while navigating their service year, provide practical solutions for improving communication, as well as bust some common myths around managing up. So I want to pause for a moment before we dive into the content for this session because I really want to hear from all of you. So what comes to mind when you hear the term managing up? Please enter your ideas in the chat box and make sure you send to all participants. We want your comments to be visible to everyone, so please make sure to enter them in the chat panel and not the Q&A panel further down the screen.
Cool. So let's see what we got in the chat panel. So we got communication, collaboration. Kevin says mutual understanding. That's very important in a supervisor-supervisee relationship. Let's see, managing up. Someone says inclusiveness. Very important. Participating constructively in the management process, regardless of your place in the power chain. Well said, Kat. Let's see, managing up means being a participant in the management process. Again, well said. Let's see. Designated time for feedback, conflict resolution in a professional manner. Signa, we've got some really good guesses and suggestions here. Let's see, compromise and open-mindedness. These are all really great. Let's see, indispensable. Nova says indispensable. I'm not sure if that means make yourself indispensable or I'm going to say that it means make yourself indispensable, which is a tactic that I agree with. Let's see, helping someone accomplish something without them realizing they needed or had help. Oh, these are really great answers. I love this. So let's go back to Signa, who is going to define managing up for us and really let us know what that means. Signa?
All right, thanks, Calvin. Awesome, thank you for those responses. They were great. So I want to spend the next few minutes discussing what I mean when I say managing up, and then we'll dive into some myth busting around the practice of managing up. In their article, Managing Your Boss, Drs. Thomas Zuber and Erica James write that managing up is a process of consciously working with your boss to obtain the best possible results for you, your boss, and the organization. This is not political maneuvering or kissing up. Rather, it's a deliberate effort to bring understanding and cooperation to a relationship between individuals who often have different perspectives. In other words, it's not a bad thing, and really the heart of managing up is all about communicating well. Okay, so let's dive deeper into some of the common myths surrounding managing up, some of which came up in the chat comments, and I think we'll get to address some of those. Okay, so myth number one, managing up is telling my supervisor how to do their job. Not so. Managing up is all about communicating, asking questions, and clarifying expectations to foster a productive work relationship. It's also about creating a shared understanding of projects, timelines, direction, and vision, which ensures that you're able to meet your supervisor's expectations. Likewise, your relationship with your supervisor is about collaborating to maximize outcomes, which you can do better together. So really, managing up is about being easy to supervise. I think it's important to emphasize that the VISTA supervisor relationship, like any relationship really, is a partnership. It's about doing your part to make sure you're aligned with your supervisor's expectations and the goals of the organization that you're serving with. Okay, so let's look at managing up myth number two. It's my supervisor's job to manage so that I don't have to. Well, believe it or not, very few supervisors actually have been taught how to manage, and they really appreciate your help and guidance. Also, even though you may not manage other people at this very moment, you're in charge of yourself. Yes, you do have a supervisor, but a sense of personal leadership and initiative goes a long way and will help you be a better learner and worker. Personal leadership means that you help others work with you, you collaborate, and you communicate well so that others know how to help you succeed. The next myth I want to talk about is the myth of I could never manage my supervisor. So suspicions aside, the truth is that your supervisor cannot read your mind and they don't know everything. Seriously, the managers I work with currently regularly tell me that sometimes they feel like they don't know what they're doing in their leadership roles. Also, in my leadership training work, managers often tell me that managing is easier if the people they supervise actually communicate their needs. Believe it or not, managing people is hard, and managers struggle too. Some of the common challenges they experience include delegating, giving constructive feedback, focusing on the big picture or being strategic, projecting confidence, and perhaps surprisingly, getting support from above, or managing up in other words. In fact, one of the topics I teach managers in my classes is how to manage up to their directors, department administrators, and vice presidents. It seems a bit crazy, but supervisors have the same questions and challenges around managing up as many of you do. The bottom line is that you are smart. They selected you for this project because they had confidence in your abilities. They need you, and they're relying on you to help them help you be successful. So now that we've discussed a few of the managing up myths, let's talk about some of the real-life managing up challenges that you're currently experiencing or have struggled with during your VISTA year. So we've got another chat question for you. Please respond to the question, what managing up challenges are you currently experiencing? Please enter your ideas in the chat box and make sure that you send to all participants.
This is a very interesting question, I think, and I think we're going to hopefully get some good, thoughtful answers in here. I think someone already said, maybe they're having issues with their supervisor who is maybe pushing their beliefs on them, which can be a really uncomfortable situation. So someone says, my supervisor is hardly ever in the office and doesn't respond to emails when she's out. And that can be very frustrating, especially when you need something immediately. So my supervisor takes months to review even the simplest of projects, which stalls my work progress. My suggestion, let them know that. I mean, if you haven't had that conversation with your supervisor, you can definitely use some of the tricks in this that we're going to mention later, to have that difficult conversation. Say, hey, I've noticed it takes a little bit long for you to get back to me, and I'd really appreciate some more immediate feedback. Let's see, what do we got? More of a friend-like relationship, so it's hard to address more serious issues. That is, I don't think that's uncommon. I think that's a very common thing that happens. You become friends with your supervisors, and it gets hard to bring up difficult topics with your friends, even though it should be the opposite way. If they're your friend, it should be pretty easy to talk to them. Let's see. My supervisor isn't the one who hired me. He inherited me and a lot of people who have been here a long time. Also, he's 26, and that makes him younger than almost all the employees he has to supervise. Yeah, that's really interesting, and also not uncommon in nonprofit world. There's lots of younger leaders in the nonprofit world, which is what I've noticed. Take a look from his side. I'm sure he or she is not unaware that they are younger than the people that they're supervising. So it's really interesting. Let's see. Expectations of direct service. That is not what you do as a VISTA. So if someone's expecting you to do direct service and you know otherwise, you're well within your rights as a VISTA to say, I'm sorry, but I can't do that task. Let's see. Micromanaging can be very frustrating. I know I don't like to be micromanaged. Let's see, we are a young organization, so most of what we do is learning on the go. Heather, that's my preferred method of working, honestly. I think it's really fun. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think it's really fun. So it's like you can all learn together and kind of build something together. Let's see. Oh, man, these are really great. Thanks, guys. We're going to keep these in mind as we are going through the rest of this webinar. Signa, if you would, let's see, we're seeing some themes that have popped up, and I think you've got a few common challenges that you're going to address.
Yes, awesome, thank you. So thanks for answering that chat question. I definitely see some of the themes that have come up. I have a few common challenges that I'm planning to address based on what VISTAs have said in the past, and then we'll discuss other challenges that came up in the chat as well. Okay, so common challenge number one that I want to address is sort of generally around, my supervisor is scary. So you're intimidated by your supervisor, or you perceive them as grumpy, brash, or just plain scary. So now what? First, I'll ask you to start by checking on what assumptions you might be making about your supervisor. How you're perceiving them may not be the way that they're intending to come across. One of my VISTAs once told me that she thought I was intimidating when she first met me, and it blew my mind. I had no idea that other people might find me intimidating. So maybe your supervisor doesn't either, or maybe they just have a really direct communication style that makes them seem insensitive, or maybe they're just not a morning person. Our list of what-ifs could go on, but I'm just asking you to check in and see if your idea of them is accurate. Do other people in the office see them this way? Check your impression with your coworkers. The other folks who work with you are your allies and can be excellent interpreters regarding communication styles, supervisors' pet peeves, which we'll talk a little bit about later, and then just general office culture. Also consider whether you're basing your opinion on one particularly memorable interaction with your supervisor. Did you catch them at the wrong moment on a bad day, say the wrong thing at the wrong time? Sometimes the stories we tell ourselves about other people and their intentions are not correct or complete when we start to question how we got to that conclusion. Knowing your supervisor's hot buttons also means that you can avoid stepping in it unintentionally. For example, a former supervisor of mine really disliked complaining, and it took me a while to understand that what I felt like was therapeutic venting and self-expression really pushed her buttons. She felt like complaining wasn't productive and would rather spend energy focusing on what we could actually control and influence, which I could appreciate. And once I figured this out, our relationship significantly improved. This is a managing up challenge that a lot of managers in my classes struggle with as well. I regularly hear them say things like, "This is good advice, but how do I find out what my supervisor's hot buttons are?" My response is often, "Well, have you tried asking?" This strategy tends to make people pretty nervous, but it's really the easiest way to get the information you need. You might say something like, "What's your biggest pet peeve at work?" Or, "What advice do you have for me to avoid irritating you?" You should ask in a way that makes sense for your relationship with your supervisor, so frame it in a way that works for you. But I'm here to tell you that just asking that question isn't that big of a deal. The worst that can happen is that they don't know off the top of their head. They say they don't have any hot buttons, which if they're human is probably not true. Or they tell you that they prefer not to share this information. If you hit a brick wall, again, you can always rely on your coworkers to help you figure this out. And usually just being observant will probably get you most of the answers you need for overcoming this particular challenge. Another piece of advice that I have is for dealing with an intimidating supervisor is to seek out feedback. This can be scary in and of itself, but it's a huge opportunity to better understand how your supervisor perceives you. Don't wait for an appraisal period to find out your supervisor's opinion of you and your work. If you get bad or constructive feedback when you ask for it, discuss your concerns, but do it on a mature level. Try not to be overly emotional or confrontational. Really just try to understand the feedback you're getting and why. One-on-one meetings are also a great forum for requesting feedback, and making this a regular part of these meetings creates a space for feedback to become a regular component of your VISTA supervisor relationship. Also, if you're not getting the feedback that's specific enough to act upon, ask questions to clarify, like, what would you like to see me do in the future? What specifically would you like me to change? How do you recommend I approach this differently next time? Then, be sure to listen to what your supervisor says and try to act on it. It's also okay to ask for help. If your supervisor's one of your supervisor's responsibilities is to help you remove barriers so that you can be successful. Finally, give feedback to your supervisor too. Let them know that you need something that they're not providing, and give them positive feedback and appreciation when they do something helpful to you. Everyone needs feedback, even supervisors. Feedback is a great relationship building tool, and once you've gotten more comfortable with your supervisor, you might just be able to let them know that they can come across as scary sometimes also. Okay. Another common challenge is that my supervisor is super busy and doesn't have time for me. We've definitely heard this theme come up in the chat. So what's that you say? Your supervisor's too busy and they don't have time for you. This is a very common challenge experienced by VISTAs. And it's a challenge experienced by most people who have a supervisor. The bottom line is that managing by meeting and communicating with the people they lead is a supervisor's job, so they really should be doing this. However, there are only 24 hours in a day, so how can you make this work considering that we're all strapped for time and resources? Well, first you'll need to actually ask for a meeting, and don't take no for an answer. This might sound a little risky, but I'm serious, and the risk is worth the reward. Your supervisor should make time for you, and you might be able to help them make time to fit you in. So here's how I recommend going about this. First, strategize and prioritize. Make sure you're spending your precious time with your supervisor on your top priorities. Also, you should take charge of the meeting. Bring an agenda and start with your agenda items. Also, make sure to solicit clear expectations and priorities. Most supervisors don't spell out their expectations, and the burden of discovery falls on those below them. Don't wait for your boss to provide you with this information. Instead, initiate a series of informal discussions on our objectives, helping your supervisor clarify and communicate his or her ideas. And make sure you communicate your own ideas as well. Next, provide adequate information. Information is power, and a poorly informed supervisor cannot advocate for your needs or make the best decisions for your project or for the organization. I also recommend coming to your supervisor with solutions and not problems. Now, you may not know all the answers, but coming with a few solutions to the challenges you're facing will show your supervisor that you've thought through the problem, and they'll likely be more willing to help you brainstorm additional options and help you implement the solution. Also, be sure to relay good and bad news, and don't surprise your supervisor. Remember that your supervisor has a supervisor too, and that they're responsible to that person. As a manager, it does not feel good to have your boss tell you about a mistake or sometimes even good news about your own team, and that's the first time that you've heard it. It makes managers feel disconnected and vulnerable. So don't put your supervisor in this situation. Make sure they know about everything that's happening with your project, good and not so good. Another great tip is to match your communication method to their preference. Do they prefer email, Skype, in-person, texting, walking meetings in between other meetings? Our list could go on, but varying your communication method can be a great way to snag time with your supervisor if they can't sit down with you for 30 minutes at a time. If you need to talk to them, send them an informational email in the morning and then walk them to an afternoon meeting to get the information you need from them. Finally, follow up after you have a conversation to check for understanding and make sure that you document who's doing what so that everyone is accountable. In the chat questions, I saw that someone said that their supervisor has variable instructions or that they keep changing. This is one way to help with that challenge. Clear communication is also just a great way to build trust with your supervisor. If you communicate well, they know what they can expect from you, and they know that you're making every attempt to make sure that they have all the information they need to be successful themselves. A great tool for facilitating communication is the one-on-one meeting. We'll discuss one-on-one best practices in a bit, but if you're not already having formal one-on-ones with your supervisor, I highly recommend asking for this time with them. It's a great opportunity to update your supervisor on your project, learn about their agenda, and build your relationship. Another common managing up challenge is when supervisors take the no news is good news approach, which means that they only communicate if there's a problem. If this is you, you're not alone. And unfortunately, this is a popular but less than effective management technique. Mostly this happens because the supervisor is very busy or because they try to avoid giving constructive feedback and they don't want to hurt other people's feelings, or because they're trying to avoid micromanaging and they've swung to the far other side of the spectrum to totally hands-off, or it could be because you're awesome and they feel like you don't need a lot of coaching. Regardless of the reason, at best, this method is exasperating, and at worst, it can create a culture where we all walk around on eggshells trying not to attract the supervisor's attention because it means we're in some sort of trouble. However, don't despair. You can counter this tactic by being visible, by asking a lot of questions, and by working to build a professional relationship with your supervisor. Many of the strategies that I mentioned using for a busy boss work with the no news is good news supervisors as well. These include catching their attention during in-between times, grabbing coffee before a meeting or walking and talking on the way, perhaps using time on a car trip as a relationship building opportunity, or grabbing a few minutes of their time after an all-staff meeting. By taking advantage of these in-between moments, you can actually get a lot of the information you need to get your work done. Also, make sure to use these few moments strategically by prioritizing the questions you have and by asking for feedback on specific issues. This time may be precious, so make sure you're getting exactly what you need. Finally, asking your supervisor about themselves and their job can help draw them out so that they'll be more forthcoming with both positive and constructive feedback. This is a good relationship building tool for almost any situation, and people generally like to talk about themselves, so use this to your advantage. People are much more likely to help those with whom they have a relationship and for people who they feel like genuinely care about them. While you're at it, tell your supervisor a little bit about yourself as well. Help! I have 12 supervisors is one of the other issues that we hear from VISTAs a lot. Okay, so maybe it's not 12, but more than one, which sometimes can feel like too many, and this can be a real challenge. Even with the best supervisors, expectations may collide or mismatch. They may not be communicating with each other, which is definitely something I heard during the chat, or they may both think they're your #1 supervisor and their assignment should take priority. So what can you do to work within this situation? Well, I recommend frequent communication and documentation and follow-up to make sure that everyone is on the same page. This may look something like copying all of your supervisors on an informational or project-specific email, keeping great meeting notes and perhaps storing them electronically where everyone can access them, or maybe emailing meeting notes out to all your supervisors. Also, you can always ask them to talk to each other. It's totally okay to discuss the concerns you have about feeling pulled in different directions or about having conflicting priorities. If this is the case, it's like your supervisors just don't realize that this is happening, and hopefully they'll take steps to figure it out. Also, the positive spin on this is that now you have more mentors, a larger network, and several potentially excellent references. So it's possible that having more than one supervisor will turn out to be a great opportunity, especially as you finish out your VISTA year and are looking toward what's next. All right, so we're going to transition from managing up challenges and talk about a specific intervention that I've already mentioned during this presentation. I'm talking about one-on-one meetings, which, in my opinion, are one of the best options for building a productive VISTA supervisor relationship. But before we jump into talking about the best practices and using a tool that I love, I want to get a sense of how many of you are currently having one-on-one meetings with your supervisor. So please answer the poll questions on the right side of your screen.
Awesome. Thanks, Signa, for introducing this poll for us. Our question is, do you have regular one-on-ones with your direct supervisors? Yes, we meet but not regularly. I rarely meet with my supervisor. I never meet with my supervisor. And what's a one-on-one meeting? I hope for all of our sake it is definitely not the last one, but if it is, have no fear. We're going to dive into some methods and strategies for helping you have that one-on-one meeting, that initial meeting, and how to keep that going. So let's see, looks like our poll is closed. Let's see, what do we got? Take a second for these results to come through so we can see where everyone stands. Let's see, I have a regular one-on-one meeting with my supervisor. He gives me all this pretty good feedback usually. Sometimes it's hard to hear, but I appreciate even the hard to hear feedback. All right, so let's see, we got 46 of you saying yes, we do. That's a little under half. I guess under a third, about a third, saying yes, we have regular one-on-ones. Some people say we rarely meet, we rarely meet. I never. Two of you said you never meet with your supervisor. Oh no, we need to change that. Maybe that is your action step for this webinar, is to change that and make that happen. Ask for that meeting, be assertive, not aggressive, and ask for that meeting. So yeah, let's see. We're gonna bring Signa back, and she is going to let us know more about one-on-one meetings, best practices, and really how to get that started for yourself.
Cool, thanks, Calvin. So for those of you that are currently meeting with their supervisor, I'm going to outline a one-on-one tool that has a particular approach, and so I think this will be helpful for you all as well. So let's jump in. So first, I just want to acknowledge that I know all of you are supposed to be having one-on-one meetings with your supervisor and that this is a requirement of VISTA. However, I also want to acknowledge that what we're supposed to do isn't what we always do. It isn't always possible, and sometimes it isn't the best thing to do. So being required doesn't always mean that it's realistic or relevant. But this doesn't mean that your supervisor is off the hook for meeting with you. I just want to recognize that life gets in the way of our best intentions sometimes. So this being said, let's spend a moment talking about one-on-ones because I think it's one of your best resources for getting the attention you need from your supervisor. And it's something that you can ask for, easily set up, and lead without asking too much from your supervisor. Best practices for ensuring successful one-on-one meetings are as follows. One-on-one meetings should be held weekly or as often as possible for 30 minutes. They should be scheduled and are rarely missed. The primary focus of the one-on-one meeting is on you, the VISTA, and you should always make sure to take great notes and follow up on action items. I want to mention that the tool that's linked on this slide is geared toward managers, meaning that it's intended for supervisors to use during a one-on-one meeting with their employees. However, the one-on-one meeting approach is easily transformed or turned around so that it can be used by the person being managed during a one-on-one. In fact, my supervisor and I both use this tool and bring our own copies to the one-on-one. So let's dive into the actual one-on-one meeting approach, which describes how the time during the meeting should be spent. The premise of the one-on-one meeting is called the 10-10-10 approach. This means that the 30-minute meeting is broken down into 3 10-minute sections. The first 10-minute block is for you, the VISTA member, and you are responsible for leading this part of the meeting. This means that you bring the agenda items and you go first. This ensures that you get the time you need for your questions and have the space to inform your supervisor about successes as well as any barriers you're facing. The second 10-minute block is for your supervisor's agenda items. One of the secrets of this model is that you going first during the first 10 minutes ensures that your supervisor won't monopolize the entire meeting with their stuff. However, because you went first, it's very likely that they've already checked off some of the things on their list because you've already addressed them. So they should also get what they need during their 10 minutes. This may be something that is a little tricky for them to adopt because it might be new and different, but try it out, see how it works. The final 10 minutes are for your career development, personal and professional goal setting, and any other growth opportunities. This is set aside as an intentional part of the approach so that there's always time for these conversations. This may be where you talk about mentorship, take a look at your resume, get connections from your supervisor for informational interviews, work on a stretch goal, etc. As such, hopefully this becomes a regular part of your VISTA supervisor interactions and is an ongoing discussion throughout your service year. This is also a great opportunity to continue to develop and strengthen your relationship with your supervisor. In addition to the one-on-one tool, the Manager Tools website also has several amazing podcasts that are helpful if you're looking for more information on how to conduct and get the most out of one-on-one meetings. The link to the website where you can find an editable one-on-one meeting Word document and the podcasts I mentioned is included in the resources section of this presentation. So if one-on-one meetings are at heart about relationship building, let's discuss some of the questions you can use to engage your supervisor in the one-on-one conversation. Here are a few relationship building questions and expectation setting questions that may be helpful to you as you think about what kinds of questions to ask your supervisor. What's your preferred mode of communication? This ties back to several of our common challenges, and getting this information up front can go a long way toward making sure you're communicating well as getting what you need from your supervisor. What are your expectations for this project? Try to get specifics by asking about timelines, deadlines, project partners, and what you should do if you run into a problem. What can I handle on my own and what needs your approval? This is a great question to know and can be a huge time saver for you to move your project along. This is also just a great clarifying question about span of control and authority. How often would you like status updates on this project? Ask this and then provide status updates on schedule. This will help you build credibility with your supervisor, and if they say that they don't really need status updates, take initiative and provide them anyway. Final question is, what are your top priorities for this project? This question shows that you care about alignment and that you're interested in helping your supervisor meet their goals, in addition to your own. Understanding your supervisor's agenda also means that you can align your tasks and project with that agenda in order to forward both your goals. This also means that your supervisor is more likely to advocate for you and will see you as a trusted ally. So I've just provided you with a few examples of relationship building questions, and I'd love to hear what you've come up with around these as well. Can you think of other relationship building questions that off the top of your head or that you would create? Or what types of relationship building questions have you used in the past? Please enter your ideas in the chat box, and please make sure to send to all participants.
Yeah, let's take a look. Let's see what we can get. Relationship building questions, or what types of relationship building questions have you used? I know personally, we're waiting on some answers to come in. I love feedback, and I love, criticism, good or bad. So I'm always asking, how can I do this better? Am I meeting the expectation? Veronica says, what is your Myers-Briggs type? I love that question. I love Myers-Briggs. I think it's so interesting. I am an ENFP, just so you know. Let's see. How did you develop the motivation, passion for the work we are doing, and what is that specific passion? Ooh, that's a really fun question. That's like personal and professional. That's a good combo of the both. You get to know a little bit more about their background while also, asking questions directly related to what type of work you're doing. Let's see, what's your learning style? That's fun because I feel like that's usually a question that a supervisor asks of a trainee, so it's nice to flip that on its head and ask that of your supervisor. Again, yeah, and like Signa said, these are questions that help you start a conversation that can lead to who knows where. You start with one question, as it often goes, and then you end up somewhere completely different, and you leave knowing a little bit more about each other. See, what is your management style? What do you like most about our mission? Let's see, someone said, great idea, Anne-Marie. What did Anne-Marie say? I missed it. All right, let's see. What are some objectives for the organization during my time here? That is a very good question, and definitely can inform the type of work you do, how you do it, who you get to help you. I'm constantly asking that question of our own organization, say, what are our goals? What are our goals for this project specifically? What are our goals overall? Where are we going in the future? And that definitely informs the way that I think about projects and the way that I approach different tasks that I'm handed. Where do they see themselves 5 years in their program? I like that question. I love imagining the future, thinking about where I see my own life 5 years in the future. I think asking someone else, again, is a personal question and one that can give you a lot of insight into your supervisor. During my interview, I was asked who my favorite Disney princess is. That's great, Connor. I'm curious to know the answer. I think it's kind of funny. That's one of those questions people ask to sort of break the ice and make you not so nervous during an interview. I appreciate those questions. Wait, so these are all really, really great answers. Signa, can you let us know more about getting support and where people can, access support, for their supervisor issues?
Sure thing. Thanks, Calvin. It was really interesting hearing all of those questions you all came up with. They were excellent. I really like the learning styles and the MBTI question, something that gets at sort of that personality or preferences around workplace dynamics. My supervisor and I are almost exactly the opposite MBTI style, and that is really helpful to know when we have, communication issues or just we're just really different people, and so we can have a similar language to talk about some of that stuff and call it out, so it's not just a mystery about why we're experiencing the world differently. So thanks for that. I really love that question. Okay, so let's move on to talk a little bit about getting support. We know that a year of services at Vista is not without its challenges, and we want to encourage you to tap into your resources for support. Calvin and I are going to spend the next few minutes discussing some of the resources available to you at your site, at your VISTA program, and at the Corporation for National and Community Service. So first, I want to give a shout out to the support offered by other VISTAs at your site or on your team. My fellow VISTAs during my 2 years of service were a great source of support and camaraderie. I encourage you to ask your fellow service members what's working well for them and tap into the resources of your peers all over the country through the VISTA campus forums as well. Likewise, your coworkers can be an amazing source of support and assistance. They have a history at the project and the organization. They can give you a first-hand account of what it's like to work at that organization, as well as give you tips on how to succeed and thrive. A few coffee dates with coworkers can go a long way toward making your service here awesome. Finally, your supervisor's supervisor may also be a resource and source of support for you. This can be tricky because you typically want to avoid going over your supervisor's head when issues arise. But if you really need help and you feel like you've hit a wall with all of the other resources at your site, you can certainly reach out to a higher level in the organization to see if they have advice for you.
Yeah, you know, and speaking of and speaking of other people in the organization, I just want to say that I'm looking at the chat right now, and this is a perfect example. You know, Bethany is sharing something. You have fellow VISTAs here who are here to support you, and help you out through any situation. You know, speaking as a person who works for VISTA, the program, you know, there may be times when a situation with a supervisor is just too challenging for you to manage on your own, and that's okay. Sometimes there are issues that are bigger than yourself and issues that are bigger, you know, that you can't solve on your own. For example, if your supervisor is just straight up mean to you or is harassing you, if your supervisor is missing and you don't know when you'll see them again, or if you really do have so many supervisors that you can't get any decisions made on a project. If you're facing any of these challenges or really any other situation that's preventing you from having a successful VISTA service experience, I want to make sure to point you to some of the VISTA and perhaps and some of the organizational resources that are available to you. One of them, you know, is VISTA as a whole. VISTA is here to help you if you have a situation that's too challenging. Your supervisor is honestly not your only source of support. You know, there are VISTA leaders. Some of you have a VISTA leader, some of you do not, but a VISTA leader can be good, you know, for providing general advice, pointing you in the right direction for resources, and they can also serve as a liaison or a facilitator for difficult conversations. If you find that you do want to bring some of these issues up to your supervisor, but you're not sure how, definitely reach out and say, hey, will you sit with me while I have this conversation, or would you be okay helping me, you know, bring this up to our supervisor? I'm a little nervous, and I think you guys have a good relationship. Even another coworker, say, hey, I think you guys have a good relationship. Would you mind helping me make this meeting happen? Your state office is an excellent resource. Any issues that you might have in terms of the overall management of your project, the direction of your project, you know, its ability to attain its goals, or any issue that can't be resolved by your supervisor alone, turn to your state office. They are really, really easy to get in touch with, and they respond really well to email. I hear a lot of people call them, and they don't get calls back. Your state office is in and out. They're doing site visits. They're incredibly busy people, but always very responsive to email. The way to email them is it's your state abbreviation at cns.gov. So if you're in Texas, that's going to be tx@cns.gov. If you're in New York, that'll be ny@cns.gov, and so on and so forth. Please get in touch with your state office. They are there to support you. You are never bothering them. That is what they're there for. You know, and again, other vistas are such a great resource. Check out the VISTA campus forums. If you are not already, log into Facebook and join a VISTA alumni group, or just a general, you know, Facebook group that is for alums of AmeriCorps programs. those are also great resources. You can reach out and say, hey, has anyone ever experienced this? All of these people have been through, they've all been through different AmeriCorps programs, you know, and they're your peers. They're people who can help you out and maybe give suggestions or examples of things that they did, you know, to mitigate some of their issues. So again, VISTA is here to support you. Your VISTA leader, your state office, and other VISTAs are all here for you. So now we're going to go back to Cigna for some next steps to take.
All right, thanks, Calvin. Great advice. So now what should you do with all your shiny new managing up knowledge? So here are a few ideas for next steps, because we want to make sure that this is something that you can apply today on the job. So a couple of recommendations that we have are taking time to write down a few questions that you feel are most important in establishing a great working relationship with your supervisor. The relationship building questions that we reviewed during the presentation may be helpful, or of course you can create your own. Some of the ones that came up during the chat question were awesome, and I would highly recommend just stealing those ones and making them yours. Another suggestion is to ask for and set up a one-on-one meeting with your supervisor to discuss the questions you created. Also, schedule a recurring one-on-one meeting with your supervisor to keep yourself on track, to build rapport, and to discuss any issues that you're having. Finally, I recommend researching managing up strategies to find out what works for you. The advice I provided is pretty applicable to a variety of situations, but you'll still need to make these strategies your own and find out what's going to work with your communication style and in your particular situation. However, I will encourage you to try something new and to push yourself out of your comfort zone a little. The rewards for your efforts may surprise you. To help you out with the research piece, I've included some links to several of the articles that I used to help create this presentation, as well as a link to the website where you can get the one-on-one tool and podcast. There's also a link to VISTA resources should you need to tap into your CNCS support network. So now that you've learned some tips, tricks, and tools for managing up, what are your next steps? What's one thing from today's presentation that you want to put into practice? Please enter your ideas in the chat box and make sure you send to all participants. Hey, Calvin, are you tracking the chat?
Oh, sorry, I have been talking to everyone listening. I've been talking, and I was on mute the whole time. I'm just rambling on over here, just chatting it up all to myself. Yeah, so people have said, they're a huge fan of the, what did that say? Huge fan of the manager note-taking tools, as they're not the best at taking notes during meetings, tend to jot down notes and work on memory. I'm the same way, and I need to work on that and get better at that. Let's see. Joan says, you were talking. I was talking, Joan, but I had myself on mute. Let's see. Someone's going to ask for more feedback. That is an excellent suggestion, and honestly, that is, that's kind of the gist of this entire presentation, I think, is just ask for feedback, ask for the help that you need, ask for that assistance. Let's see. I'm almost done with my VISTA service, but I'm going to be a VISTA leader in just over 2 months. I want to take all these tools and help my VISTA cohort manage up. Way to go, Kevin. We appreciate you being proactive, and I'm glad that you were able to get something out of this. Andrea says, set up a calendar that shows everyone's activities for the week, one-on-one meeting using a 10-10-10 agenda. So here in our office, we also use shared calendars, that show where people are during the day. So it's really easy to just kind of shoot someone an email and say, hey, I noticed you're free at 2 o'clock. Do you have time for a quick meeting? Super easy to do. I really like that suggestion. Yeah, so these are really great, guys. Thanks for answering that question. I really hope that what you say you're going to do, you actually do and follow through and have these really great meetings with your supervisor. Let's see, Cigna's going to give us some resources to go forth and to help you all out.
Okay, so as promised, here are the resources I mentioned that informed this presentation. I really appreciate you all letting me spend time with you. I always love talking to VISTAs, and this topic in particular is close to my heart. Thank you all for your time and participation, and I'm going to hand it over to Calvin to facilitate the next portion of the webinar, as well as open it up for some Q&A, and I've got some themes jotted down that came up during the chats that I think we'll want to address during that time. Calvin?
Yeah, totally. And I want to keep this slide up just for a minute, just so everyone has a second to get these. If you have your smartphone or camera phone on you, it may be a good idea just to take a photo of the screen so that you can check out these links later on. I believe, let's see, I think Rachel will be posting some of these links into the chat box, so you'll have them there also. Yeah, look at that. There they are. They're the links in the chat bar, so we can be sure to check those out. There's some really great things there. So we are going to take questions from you all now. We're about to get to the Q&A portion of this webinar. But before we get there, we really want to know what you thought of this presentation. On the right side of your screen, you're going to see a quick poll where you can share feedback about this webinar. Please take a moment to answer these questions. We like to be able to improve these webinars, and your input helps us so much. We really read all of your comments. We read every single one of your responses. I can't tell you how much time I spend poring over your responses and trying to make these better for the next time. Our team at Education Northwest is doing the exact same thing. Really take all of your feedback to heart. So please take a moment to evaluate us before we start answering questions, or even while we're answering questions. Yeah, so thanks for that. We've given you a lot to think about on this webinar. So now it's your turn to ask some questions. You can ask a question using the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen, or we're going to ask our operator to tell you how to ask questions on the phone. Amy?
Yes, thank you, sir. To ask a question, please press star followed by the number 1. Unmute your phone and record your name clearly at the prompt. Your name will be needed to introduce your question. To cancel your request, you may press star followed by the number 2. Again, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star and then the number 1. One moment, please, for questions to queue.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Well, we will wait a second for people to call in. But while we're waiting, Signa, we've got some questions in the Q&A panel. So let's get to some of these while we're waiting. All right, so Serena asks, what if you're trying to do everything possible and yet you're still having issues? My direct supervisor is great, but the host site manager, I've tried to talk to her on many occasions, but it actually made things worse. I stay silent, but still am having issues. That's an interesting question, Serena. Signa, do you have any comment on that?
Let's see. So it sounds like the relationship with the direct supervisor is good, which is great. This may be something, and Calvin, please jump in if you feel like you have something to add to this, but it might be a good opportunity to talk with your VISTA program about that challenge. It's really designed that everyone at the organization should be supportive of hosting a VISTA and should be helping that person succeed. So, if you're facing barriers that your direct supervisor can't address, or you need this other person to collaborate with you, I would chat with your VISTA program and see what opportunities are available there. There may also be an opportunity to talk to the organization leader also about those challenges, or really work with your supervisor to figure out how to work together to make this person more amenable or easier to work with, because they may have, particular ways of working or communicating that you're not aware of.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it sounds like you have a good relationship with your direct supervisor. So maybe ask them for tips. Maybe they've worked with this person before, or they've known them for a while and can really give you some specific hints, or tips for dealing with this supervisor. If you're feeling constantly chastised on your project, that's probably not a good thing. And I would maybe give your state office a heads up and say, hey, I'm going through this. This is what I'm experiencing on my project. Do you have any, tips, for me? Oftentimes, your state office has worked with projects for a really long time, years, and they have some history of a project. They can really offer you some insightful feedback. So yeah, our suggestions would be, get in touch with your state office if you need to. Talk to your direct supervisor, and speak to whoever at your project has experience working with this person. Let's see. We have another question that says, I'd like to know more information regarding training and development with VISTA. Do you have suggestions for VISTAs interested in this area? Let's see. I think that question is asking, I'd like to know more information regarding training and development with VISTA. I'm not sure if that is training and development on this side. If it is, we could connect offline and talk about, what we do here at VISTA in the training unit and things like that. Continue to utilize the VISTA campus. There's lots and lots of resources there if you're looking for specifics related to your project, like fundraising, grant writing, things that will help you succeed and do better in your project. Continue to attend our webinars. We have them monthly, covering a wide range of topics. But if you're interested in what we do here in VISTA at a national level, we could definitely connect offline. We'll put my email address in the chat box, and you could shoot me an email. Let's see. I'm going to ask Amy if we have any questions on the phone.
Currently, sir, we aren't showing any questions over the phone. But again, as a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question over the phone, you may press star followed by the number 1 to do so.
All right, thank you. Signa, I think this is going to be a good question for you. Philip Armstrong asks, he says, there seems to be a tension between the role of the VISTA in doing in-depth projects that require significant time commitment from the supervisor and the supervisor who is overcommitted with many responsibilities. How does the VISTA work around tension?
That's a really good question, and it's definitely not an uncommon challenge. My thought is to communicate that with your supervisor. Have a sit down with them and talk about, who's responsible for what and how do you get things done when they're unavailable or are out of the office. Are there other people that you can go to for help and support that could potentially fill in for that person? Do they need to be responsible for everything? And I also wonder if whether your supervisor might be hanging on to things that they could actually delegate. Sometimes that's a big challenge for supervisors, is letting go of things that they were either in charge of before, were their brainchild, or is now their baby project, and hooray, they've got a VISTA to take on this project and to build capacity and to take it forward. And sometimes it's difficult for folks to let go of that. So if you think that that might be a challenge, I would have a conversation with that person about specifically what it is that you're struggling with, maybe give them a couple of examples and ask if there are other people in the organization that you could go to if they're unavailable or aren't able to help you. And then also, ask if you can take initiative. See if there are pieces of it that maybe they don't need to be involved with. Ask them to help you be empowered. And, whether if they need status updates or if they are feeling like they need to be more in the loop, I would just continue to have that ongoing conversation and share those successes with them when you have them and help build that trust so that maybe they can let go of things that are possible for them to let go of.
Totally. I think that's a very great response. Maybe your supervisor, maybe the tension is coming from they don't want to micromanage it, but they feel like they have to, so that's causing some stress. Again, like Signa said, having that conversation and saying, let me have this, let me take this on, trust me with this, you know, and really give your all and make that project happen. If it's a bigger or longer-term project, you know, make sure that you're doing, you know, all of the follow-up, that you're doing the wrap-up on that at the end of your year, so that it is something, you know, if it's going to extend into another VISTAS term, that maybe it's something, you know, that is easy to pass off and pick up where you left off, you know, without someone else, or sort of without your supervisor maybe having to start completely over and go through the entire thing in depth with someone else, making it easy for them, you know, on this project. And again, like we said, having that conversation, talking to them, being very direct, and, you know, very honest and upfront about, hey, I'm sensing this around this project. What are your thoughts on this? Would you mind if I took this on? I think that's an excellent, excellent approach. Good questions, guys. Let's see, we've got, Elizabeth says, the project for my VAD is not following through like my supervisor planned. What do I do if my VAD project is canceled? He takes a hands-off management approach, so I'm rarely given assignments. Elizabeth, I don't like the sound of this. My best and sincerest advice is to get in touch with your state office. If you are straying from your VAD too far and you feel like you are not doing what you signed up to do, please get in touch with your state office, because that is an issue. And we really need to be aware of that, and we need to course correct and get you back on target with your VAD, or work out some sort of arrangement with your project and get you a new VAD that is leading you in a different direction, but something that gives you some purpose in your VISTA assignment and something that you know, makes you feel fulfilled and that you're actually interested in doing. Again, apologize, you know, if your VAD project is canceled, maybe we can get you something else. But again, get in touch with your state office, and they will provide excellent guidance on what to do in that situation. Let's see. Kevin Hopkins. Ooh, Signa, this is going to be a fun one, I think. I come from a very structured corporate background. I'm finding that the environment that I'm working in now is much less organized, and it seems like the staff has become comfortable with that. How can I get everyone more organized and productive? Ooh, that's interesting. Ooh, I don't know. Kevin, maybe that, oh, that's hard. I don't know. Signa, what do you think?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things there. My advice would be focused on yourself, and I know that it sounds like you are very organized, but changing organizational culture is a huge task, and it's
huge.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to accomplish within a VISTA year term of service. So I'm going to say do what you can do, role model the great behavior that you want to see, ask for what you need from your coworkers. So for example, if they're not responding to your emails in a timely fashion, or they're not getting you things that you need from them on the time, on time, I would definitely ask for what you need. And, there may be a little bit of some managing sideways that you can do with those coworkers and managing up with your supervisor. There are times when I give my supervisor deadlines for things that I need. I'll say, in a very polite way, I need this by this time so that I can accomplish this task by the deadline. Or I'll even ask for a deadline at times. He'll give me an assignment. I'll say, okay, well, it's really helpful for me to have a deadline. So when do you need this by? When should this be accomplished by? And that's really helpful for getting other people just to think about where you're coming from, how you might be perceiving the work, and to get them just thinking about like, oh, other people have different ways of working and being and managing themselves as a professional. And so model that really good behavior, ask for what you need, and maybe do a little bit of managing sideways and managing up.
Yeah. Oh man, that was an excellent answer. Way to go, Signa. That was so good. As you're saying that, I'm thinking, like, maybe it's like it's not your job to make everyone be more organized and productive. So I wouldn't maybe put that burden on yourself to say I need to get everyone in shape. Like Signa said, focus on yourself, and doing a really good job on your own. Also, I think it's important to take a step back and say, yeah, maybe this isn't the most organized office, but are things working? Is this working for everyone? Is the work getting done? Are, are people able to find documents? Are they able to find things that they're looking for? Things like that, you know, and if that seems to work for everyone, and if things are actually going well, maybe it's perceived as, you know, maybe not being well organized, but if everyone has worked out a system that works for them, maybe there's nothing that needs to be changed. You know, and you do things your way, everyone else does theirs, their own, and then maybe you all kind of work in peace. I'm going to ask Amy again if we have anyone on the phone.
No, sir, we do not have any questions at this time.
All right. Let's see. Ramona says, what if you have a supervisor who has been told and believes that this is our miraculous people, which you all are, who can work full-time and do work for the regular staff, which is mostly part-time, and don't cost the agency a penny? Let's see. If your supervisor has been told and believes that this is our miraculous people who can work full-time, this should be working full-time, 40 to 45-ish hours a week or whatever is asked of you by your project. You should not be replacing regular staff. If you feel like you are and your job is all administrative, again, get in touch with your state office because that is not your role as a VISTA. And you should not be replacing staff for any agency. And if someone is saying, you know, that you are just a full-time staff member who's not costing anyone anything, that could be a red flag. I'm not saying that it is, but again, reach out to your state office and definitely ask them about that. Let's see, Alex, oh, this is a really good question. I think this is relevant because I know a lot of people here, we've recently had a sort of baby exodus at headquarters. We had like 4 people out at the same time. Alex says, what should you expect from your organization if your supervisor is taking temporary leave, i.e. maternity leave? Signa, what do you think?
This is a great question. This happens all the time. I mean, it's just a reality of life. So my suggestion would be, and I think Calvin can agree with this, is that you should definitely have a temporary supervisor in place to back up your regular supervisor while they're on leave. My other suggestion is that you help those 2 supervisors, ask them, work with them, talk with them about developing a transition plan. So sit down with both those folks, talk about what your projects are, talk about your existing VISTA supervisor relationship, have your existing supervisor tell the person who's going to fill in for them what their expectations are, talk about your existing, you know, relationship perhaps, and then when your supervisor comes back from a leave, do the same thing. So fill them in on what happened while they were gone, keep them in the loop, make sure that they feel like they're coming back to a project and tasks that were managed while they were away. So just make sure that both those folks are on the same page, but you should definitely have someone who's going to fill in for that person while they're gone.
Yeah, totally. You know, and I think it's okay if you know that someone's leaving to ask them, you know, what's your plan while you're gone? What extra responsibilities am I going to have to take on, or the other staff? You know, what current projects are you working on that are going to require someone to pay attention to them? These are all very valid questions to ask and super okay to ask. You know, we had a lot of people out here, and you know, we all took on some extra responsibilities to kind of assist in the meantime. When they got back, we just kind of debriefed them, said, hey, this is how this has gone. We did X, Y, and Z. Here you go. I'm going to pass this back over to you. If you have any questions, please let me know. I think that's, you know, that's an easy thing to do. If someone's going to be gone, I think what you should expect from your organization is that they are prepared and that there is a plan of attack for while that person is out. And if you're not seeing that there is one, ask around and, you know, and ask for that. Say, hey, you know, can we all meet up for a little bit and discuss what we need to do while so-and-so is gone?
Try to be as flexible as possible, too. You know, going out on leave is kind of stressful for everybody, the person who's leaving, the people who are going to cover for them. So it may be that there's some figuring things out as you go, and it's not as smooth as it was before. So just remember that, you know, you're missing a person and that human capacity, and that everyone's going to kind of try to be taking up the slack. So just try to be a little bit flexible, have a good attitude, and know that there will probably be some bumps along the way, and that's okay. That's normal.
Yeah, totally. All right, so we're going to start wrapping up here. I want to ask Amy one last time, if there's anyone on the phone.
No questions over the phone, sir.
No questions over the phone. All right. Well, thank you all so much for attending today's webinar. This has, we have one last question from Kat Cecil. I'm going to ask this of you too, Signa. What is your Myers-Briggs type and your favorite Disney princess?
I am an INTJ is my Myers-Briggs type. And favorite Disney princess, that's the first time I've heard that question. I don't know. I think I might go with Ariel just because I think mermaids are really fascinating. And that I was sort of captivated by that movie when I was young. But I'm very curious to hear about yours, Calvin.
Well, I'm an ENFP, and mine is Mulan Forever because she was really cool. She had the best songs, and I really have always wanted to do that, like, pole climbing thing with the weights. I think that's just, like, the coolest thing I've ever seen. So Mulan Forever, and she had a dragon, so that wins. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again. Thank you everyone so much for being on this webinar and participating in our evaluation. We hope that you can join us for our next webinar, which is going to be translating your VISTA service to your resume and career. This is an excellent webinar and so informative. For all of you who are about to finish your year or are starting to think about jobs, or even if you just started and it's a good thing to look forward to the future, thinking, how can I put my VISTA service on my resume? How do I translate this into something that's going to be applicable to different fields? What sort of things should I be keeping track of? Like the number of volunteers that you supervised, how much grant money you've raised, the programs that you've started. I mean, all these things are really great. In this webinar, we are going to talk to you about, translating your VISTA service to your career and your resume, and getting the most out of your VISTA service, and making yourself look as good as possible, because you've done so much great work, and we think it's really important that that is expressed and that is, apparent. When we have VISTAs working in the workforce, you are spreading the VISTA brand, the VISTA mission. You are really help spreading that. When you send your resume, it says VISTA on there, and people will call you and say, hey, what's VISTA? It looks like you've done some really cool things. Join us for that webinar so you can learn all about that. That is going to be on June 9th, 2016 at 2 p.m. Eastern. We hope to see you there. Please check out the webinars page under Connect and Learn to sign up for future webinars. That's on the VISTA campus. And we hope to see you again soon. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Signa.
Thanks, Calvin. Bye, everyone.